What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Ernie, Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, we're going to be talking about Devil's Reign Part 2 by Chip Zdarsky and Marco Cicchetto. And in this video, we're mostly going to talk about why Elektra has cause to be worried about Kingpin knowing a little secret about her connection to Matt Murdock. We'll also be talking about why Tony Stark is the absolute worst candidate to run against Mayor Fisk for the seat of Mayor of New York. And last but most certainly not least, we're also going to learn exactly how much of the Purple Man's power was Kingpin able to tap into, and exactly what the hell is the Superior for. We're going to talk about all that and more right now, but first, if you want to see more awesome videos like this one, make sure you hit that subscribe button. I post multiple videos throughout the week, plus live stream the Blerd Cave every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, and hit that bell button, that way you don't miss anything. Also, if you enjoy the video, Hulk smash that like button because it helps the channel out. Now, let's talk about Devil's Reign Part 2.
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
Okay, so the first thing I want to jump into is what's to do with Elektra. Elektra pulls up on Wilson Fisk, and at first it seems like she's threatening to kill him, kind of walking back her newfound quest to do things Matt Murdock's way and no longer act as a murderous ninja assassin, but rather as a hero who inspires hope in others. And Wilson Fisk is keenly aware of this. He knows that she's not going to do things the way that she used to do. Now, of all the information that Wilson Fisk has lost due to the Purple Children wiping Daredevil's identity away from not just everyone's memory, but from anything that was ever written or recorded, he is still keenly aware that Elektra Nachios is the one who is under the mask of Daredevil, and he seems to have some kind of information in regards to Daredevil and Elektra's connection to one another. Whatever it is that Fisk knows about their relationship, it seems like it's something that he can use against her, and Elektra seems to be of the belief that if Fisk was able to get this information to Daredevil, if somehow this got out, this would cause Matt to realize that Elektra has betrayed him. Now, this all seems to tie to when Elektra tried to recruit Matt Murdock into the Hand as Daredevil, and that for all of my reading of Daredevil and being a huge fan of Daredevil, I'm not really entirely sure what it is that Matt wouldn't know. He's keenly aware of who Elektra is and what she's done and her connections to the Hand. They've both been connected to the Hand. They've both done terrible things in the name of the Hand, so I'm not really sure what it is that he wouldn't know by this point already, or maybe it's something he's been made to forget. Whatever it is, Elektra knows that if any of this information gets out, that, you know, as she says, she'll lose everything. And what that everything could be, I don't think it's anything of a monetary nature. I think it's everything that she's been building towards up to this point and losing Matt as an ally. The other thing that comes up in this issue is Tony Stark's bid to run for mayor against Wilson Fisk. Now, this I thought was incredibly interesting because there are a lot of nods towards money in politics, corrupt politics, and why people seemingly have this very lackadaisical attitude towards voting for one politician versus another when essentially it's just two rich white dudes running against each other. Now, I said in the previous video for Devil's Reign Part 1 that I felt that Luke Cage was a better option to run for mayor against Wilson Fisk after the speech that he gave and everything he said, the way he stood up to Wilson Fisk Thunderbolts agents. I thought that, yeah, this is the guy. This is your golden moment. Everybody is rallying behind Luke Cage, even in a previous scene where they're trying to break into the old Avengers mansion to get into the sub-basement. Tony Stark tries to use his wealth to bribe these kids who just took pictures and video of them breaking into Avengers mansion, which would be incredibly problematic for the Avengers right now. And these kids don't respect Tony's money, but when Luke Cage steps up and just simply says, hey, this would be bad for us and we need to protect the city, these guys are like, oh, it's Luke Cage. Of course we'll delete the video. All of that basically just kind of is proof positive that Luke Cage was the guy. He is the guy to do this, and this issue reaffirms that. Where the rest of the Avengers are like, nah, Tony, maybe you shouldn't run. And they're not trying to be mean about it, but they're just pointing out the facts. And Luke even suggested, I'm glad that Luke was the one that suggested it and not someone else. I'm glad that Luke Cage was the one to point out the obvious, because usually in situations like this, we usually see when a black character is given an opportunity like this, it's usually some other white character who is the one who is like, oh no, let's use this guy. Let's use this random black character. But in this case, no, it's Luke Cage who steps up and says, no, it's gonna be me. And Matt Murdock himself even points out the painfully obvious, that Luke Cage, of all of them, is the only one who's never worn a mask. Now, yes, I know what you're thinking. You're probably sitting there thinking, well, what about Tony Stark? What about Captain America? They wear masks. Even though their identities are public knowledge to everyone, Captain America still wears a mask. And even though Iron Man is the quotey fingers playboy millionaire philanthropist and his identity is just out there for anyone to know, he wears a mask just the same. And what makes it even more obvious that Tony's not the right guy for this is that he tries to fight against this idea that Luke Cage should be the guy. Now, the way I felt this should have gone and the way it kind of seems like it's gonna go is that Luke Cage is gonna be that guy. He is gonna be the mayoral candidate to go against Wilson Fisk, and that Tony should just put his money behind him. Let Luke Cage use Tony's billions to run against a guy who has just as much money. Because that's something that I think politicians in the real world never understand about the people who they're trying to gain the vote of. Politicians always try and run as populist, and then once they win, they back off of everything. They try and act like, oh, I'm just like one of you, even though this person has more money than you could ever obtain in 20 lifetimes, and ultimately doesn't know anything about your struggles. Luke Cage, though he is a superhero, he's someone who grew up on the streets. He's not a playboy billionaire philanthropist like Tony Stark is. He's not a super soldier like Captain America. He's a guy who not only other superheroes can relate to, but the normal, everyday average person can relate to. And Luke Cage doesn't wear a mask. He doesn't hide who he is. Anyone who wants to find him can find him at any time. And when he does his superhero shenanigans, he doesn't try to hide who he truly is. And he probably has more to protect than anyone else. He has his wife, Jessica Jones, who technically is a superhero in her own right. She can protect herself, but they also have a child together. And that was something that was brought up in the previous issue where the Thunderbolts agents tried to attack them. And ultimately they were trying to protect other people, but they also got to protect their child, Danielle, as well. This is of paramount importance because Wilson Fisk's entire platform has been built around anti-superhero rhetoric, and not even just so much anti-superhero rhetoric, but anti-mask rhetoric, because the majority of superheroes tend to wear masks. And just like how politicians tend to pick a particular phrasing to focus on to demean their opponents, that's exactly what Wilson Fisk is going to do to Tony Stark. He's going to point out that he's Iron Man, and even though Tony is a public figure and the entire world knows that he's Iron Man, he still hides behind a mask, and he's going to use the notion that Tony Stark uses that mask as a means to disassociate himself from his superhero shenanigans, despite the fact that he's connected to him. And honestly, you're probably sitting here thinking to yourself, well, that's stupid. Why would anybody believe that? But I'm just going to point you to our own American politics. In the 2020 election, as well as previous elections, even dating back to 2016 and even going into 2008 and so on and so forth, as far back as elections have ever been a thing in American politics, not just on the presidential level, but even at lower political levels, politicians will often find something regardless of whether it's true or not, and they will hammer it home to potential voters, and the majority of those potential voters, regardless of whether they actually know this to be true or not, or regardless of whether or not Fisk claims could be debunked or proven untrue, they will hear it the first time and just take it as the gospel. And that's what Fisk is likely going to do to Tony Stark. He's going to basically throw Stark's superhero shenanigans into the public's face and some of the things that he has done that could potentially be problematic. And regardless of whether those things can be debunked, people will believe it and they will vote for Fisk instead, especially considering the power that he has now, but we'll get to that here in a moment. And what I think is very interesting about this is that Tony Stark, while he does say, oh yeah, I'll give you the money and hey, I'll do whatever I got to do to help back you up, we all know that Tony is a petty bitch, and this is not going to be let go. And we do know, thanks to some other things going on in the Marvel Comics universe, that Tony is probably going to be getting up to some other shenanigans as well. But right here, it's very obvious that Tony, he ain't happy, and he feels like he's been rebuffed by the people who he calls his friends and family. And something tells me that while he may not necessarily try to do anything to sabotage Luke Cage's ability to run as mayor, something tells me he will definitely not back him as 100% as he claims. The other thing I wanted to talk about in this is what happened to Zebediah Killgrave. It seemed like Kingpin had killed the Purple Man in the previous issue, but apparently he didn't. Killgrave is, as far as we can tell, still alive. He's being held in stasis inside of a purple gem, very similar to the purple gem that Kingpin likes to have on top of his cane. That purple gem, which has often been used as a weapon in the past, usually it's contained some kind of a laser weapon or some kind of a knockout gas or whatever, that is not the case anymore. This gem, as we saw earlier when he was speaking with Elektra, now has a thumb held inside of it that's being held in stasis, and this thumb belongs to Zebediah Killgrave. Now, we wondered how exactly Kingpin was going to harvest the ability of Zebediah Killgrave in order to have the power of the Purple Man to be able to make people do whatever he wants. Well, Otto Octavius is a very smart guy, and he's been helping Fisk with this, but he's not smart enough to actually give Kingpin what he wants. What they have done is, based off of Killgrave's DNA and his genetics, they are able to harness his ability to make people do what he wants, but not fully. He can't control people the way that Killgrave can. He can only give them enough of a mental push that they won't necessarily do what he wants 100% full stop, but they'll be more inclined to want to do it. Now, of course, Wilson Fisk immediately tries to use this ability on Otto Octavius, but Otto Octavius, while not smart enough to be able to perfectly replicate the Purple Man's abilities, he definitely was smart enough to equip himself with neuroblockers to keep Kingpin from using this ability on him. Now, I want to stick with Otto Octavius here just for a moment because we also learn in this who the Superior Four actually are. Now, we're not necessarily told in this issue who they are individually, but we know that when Otto Octavius has harnessed the ability of the Forever Gate that the Fantastic Four created back in Fantastic Four number 25, we learn that what he's done is he's used the Forever Gate, which allows someone to travel to any point in time and space, which also includes the multiverse. He was able to pull variants of himself, 3 of which all obtained some kind of power that he didn't already possess. Now, while he will act as the Reed Richards of this group, he has brought on his own version of the Thing, which is an Otto Octavius from another universe who became the Incredible Hulk instead of Bruce Banner. We also find that he's recruited his own Wolverine, a version of Otto Octavius who became Wolverine instead of Logan. And last but most certainly not least, his own version of the Ghost Rider, and Otto Octavius, who instead of becoming a man of science as he is in this universe, became a spirit of vengeance. Now, if you're sitting here thinking, wait a minute, this sounds like the Walt Simonson Fantastic Four, you're not wrong. For those who are not familiar, Walt Simonson's run basically took place roughly around Fantastic Four number 334 and ran all the way to 354. One thing that might stick out to you about the connection here is that during Walt Simonson's run of Fantastic Four, Hulk, Ghost Rider, and Wolverine were acting as the Fantastic Four alongside Spider-Man, and it seems like Otto Octavius is taking a page out of that playbook. Now, getting back to what's going on with Wilson Fisk, Wilson Fisk has basically set up everything almost, I would dare say, to perfection. He has the Fantastic Four locked behind bars in a new, what appears to be an underwater prison called the Myrmidon, which I thought was interesting that they came up with a Myrmidon. They didn't decide to use the Raft or any of the other super prisons that they've come up with in the past. They decided to make a new one called the Myrmidon. I'm also even more thrown off by the fact that they actually have women and men in the same wing of the prison. We also know that Ben Reilly is going to be one of their newest inmates because he just got dusted up by Taskmaster, and we know that Elektra is going to be too busy dealing with Kraven the Hunter to deal with Wilson Fisk, especially now that she knows that her secret from Matt Murdock is about to get out. We also can't forget that one of the Purple Children is hanging around, and if one of them is hanging around, there's no telling where the rest of them are. I can't remember if this is Shala or the other one. I know that there was another young girl whose name we never actually gotten. I sometimes get the two mixed up, but I want to say this is Shala, who we see spying on the Avengers as they're sneaking into the Avengers mansion earlier in the book. So I'm curious to find out if the Purple Children are going to factor into this in some way, that they're going to maybe help counteract what Wilson Fisk is doing with the Purple Man. Because we can't forget the Purple Children were instrumental in ensuring that Matt Murdoch's running around as Daredevil was wiped from everybody's memory. Considering that the kids weren't evil or bad people or anything like that, I would like to believe that they're going to try and help Matt out once more, considering that he risked his life to help them. This was a really solid issue, and I can't wait to see what's next. And I don't know, I've been hearing conflicting things. I'm very interested about the whole Luke Cage thing, but I'm wondering how it's going to play, or rather would have played, into Luke Cage City of Fire, which technically was said to have been canceled right before its debut, but apparently, if you look around in the right places, it actually says it just got moved back, that it won't be released until roughly around the end of April in 2022, so probably closer when all this Devil's Reign business is getting close to wrapping up. But anyways, I can't wait to see what's going to happen here with the fallout. I can't wait to see what is going to be going on between Tony Stark, the beef that might start between Tony Stark and Luke Cage, and I'm even more interested in seeing exactly how far Wilson Fisk is going to go. I wonder if it will ever become obvious to him what the Stromwinds are doing behind the scenes, trying to prep him to become president, because we know that that's what they're doing, but I don't think Fisk knows. And what's going to make this even more interesting is the fact that he is going to be up against Luke Cage for the seat of mayor, and something tells me Luke Cage will win it, but when he wins it, it's going to be bittersweet, because that means it's going to free up Fisk to go run for president. And if he does maintain this power that he has skimmed off of the Purple Man, it's going to make that even more interesting. But anyways, let me know what you thought about Devil's Reign Part 2. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.